I'd like to open this up to questions and discussion at this point, so yes. Yeah. Well, first of all, fear is an excellent word to use in that context, because that's really what's behind it. We're afraid of losing territory, losing ground, and so forth. And I'm following a progression here. The next step is I'm going to talk about specifically forgiving ourselves. This is more about loving ourselves, because we need to love ourselves. We need to care about ourselves. It's really crucial to care about ourselves. And then I'm going to talk about forgiving ourselves. The next thing, and this will be tomorrow most likely, talking about forgiving, wanting people that we have harmed or think we have harmed them to forgive us. And there's going to be an exercise there similar to this that we'll do with that. And then the last one is going to be, we're going to be working on forgiving the people that we need to forgive, that we hate, or at least dislike. And it's kind of a progression that way. You know, that's the hardest to do. And so little by little by little, the basis, in a way, forgiving ourselves can be the hardest, but that's where you have to start. And once you feel good about yourself, then you start realizing that these other people, maybe they didn't hurt me so much, that I was just really sensitive. I couldn't love myself, and so then I took offense at things that weren't really so important. But no question, there are people out there that do purposely want to hurt you, or they don't care if they hurt you in going about their daily activities. There's a reason why there are people in prison. When I would, I could look at what they were convicted of, and what the court report was about their background, and so on and so forth. It's like, these people, it's good to have them off of the street. But we can learn to forgive these people. It doesn't, and interestingly enough, the people that usually are our worst enemy is not someone that's done a felony. You know, it's not that there's somebody that has shot us and we've recovered, or beaten the crap out of us and then robbed our apartment of everything. It's usually something that wouldn't be considered a felony. So we learn to realize that those people, our enemies, they are hurting too. They're just as confused as us, probably more. And to see their pain, and to realize that their actions are a result of the extreme pain that they are in. I talked a little bit about my mother last night, this is why I say she was mentally ill. When she was 80 years old, she told me that a little after I graduated from high school, they had implanted a camera up her rectum and have been watching her ever since. And well, here's a man that has a PhD in psychology. Would you rank that as being mentally ill?
Yeah, but
okay.
although you have to watch out for that situation, but I don't think.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Also, the television gave her messages, and they were really paranoid messages. Harm was going to come.
They do that when they do colonoscopies, but generally they don't watch them for extended periods of time.
Yeah, they usually remove it. And quite honestly, the view, is not very good. The scenery is just so. And I did not want to have. You can't argue with a crazy person. And the talking to her about battery life. I'm not going to get anywhere. Back in the 70s, batteries, they weren't like they are today. So the point being is that I gradually was able to realize that what she was like was a person that was drowning. Yet I mentioned yesterday drowning in the ocean of samsara. She was like a person that was drowning. And a person that is drowning is panicked. If you would swim out and try to rescue, and I was trained when I was in high school in water safety instructor, how to save a drowning person. You can't just swim out to them. They will grab a hold of you and try to climb on top of you to keep ahead, and then you both drown. And she was like that. That if you got close to her, you were going to suffer. It was just that way. And and that was one reason why I stayed away from her. But then after doing a 3-year retreat, I had gained a lot more control of my own emotions and my own mind, and could see her more from a compassionate standpoint rather than wanting to get even, or, as I said, when I was a teenager, I wanted to kill her at times. Interestingly enough, I didn't mention this, of course, it was a murder-suicide. Have you ever seen that pattern in the news? Like I said, I could relate to this. But anyway, part of it is just realizing how much these people that are behaving that way are suffering, and it's totally out of their control. They're addicted to the panic. They're addicted to the fear and the anxiety, and they just behave in a way that is harmful for themselves, causes more and more suffering from themselves, and then causes suffering for the people around them. And part of it is realizing what your limitations are and try not to go beyond your limitations with that person. In a work situation, it can be extremely difficult because you're forced to be with these people. But it's really paying attention to your own mind, your own emotions, where you are going, how far you think you can go, and then stepping back. Am I giving you I used a good example, didn't I? Yeah, my father here, I'll commiserate with you. When I told him that I was applying for this prison chaplain job, he didn't say anything, but then I got it. And then I went home. Was going home regularly at Christmas time. I would go home once a year. That was quite an accomplishment for me to go home once a year. So I was there at Christmas time, and he told me, when you told me you applied for that prison job, I thought they'd never hire you. This is what you're talking about. Yeah, and a sense of humor can help. Seriously, a sense of humor can help. I have found that laughing at the kind of thoughts that come into my head, and also laughing at the kind of things that other people do, can really be helpful. We don't have to take things so seriously. Again, this is where wisdom comes in. Life isn't nearly as serious as we think it is. Do some of you know Kanpo Sokram Gyamtso? Anyone here know him besides Lama here? Nobody knows him, huh? He's a crazy yogi in the Kagyu tradition. He's quite old now and infirm, but he has spent a lot of time teaching in the United States and over in Europe. And one of his students who was close to him as a translator for a while told this story about him. That he was located at a Dharma center in Paris, and there was an amusement park close by, and sometimes in the middle of the afternoon he would just jump up and say, "Let's go ride the bumper cars." He would take his translator and whoever else was around, and they would go buy tickets, get on the bumper cars, and then just before they started he would say, "Meditate on emptiness." And then they would start, and he said, nobody would hit him. And I went to a talk that he gave one time, and people, he had a reputation for laughing a lot. So somebody put on his table, this was close to Halloween, a plastic skull with a battery in it that would respond to noise. So if you would clap your hand, it would light up and go, ha 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 ha. And throughout the whole talk, he would clap his hands, and this thing would laugh, or like that, and then all of us would laugh, Laugh. The humor is really healing. And we take ourselves too seriously, and we take what other people do much too seriously. There's a reason why I try to teach with humor. It's partially I can't help myself, but partially it is that it's really helpful. That our parents, I guess here's another way to look at parents. And this also has been very, very, very helpful to me. And that is, instead of looking at all the things they've done that we resent, look at all the things they have done that have been beneficial to us. And and this is a straight from Tibetan Buddhism contemplation, at least at the beginning of this, and that is to realize that your mother carried you for 9 months inside of her, and that she took care of herself enough so that you could be born probably healthy. And it's not particularly, I'm being a male, I can only speculate on this, and this contemplation, of course, was written by males, but that it's got to be uncomfortable to be pregnant, carrying a child around inside of you, getting bigger and bigger and bigger, morning sickness, and so on and so forth. And in the before modern medicine, before cesarean section, giving birth could be very dangerous. Lama Karma lost a sister through childbirth recently in Tibet. And so your mother went through a lot of difficulty, pain, perhaps fear, and so forth. And then once you're born, you're totally helpless. Someone has to take care of you. And your mother, most likely it was your mother, who was the one taking care of you, getting up in the middle of the night, feeding you. The literal translation is cleaning away your filth, and so forth. And then you were provided with an environment that allowed you to grow, to learn, and so forth. And even in spite of being my home feeling and being unsafe, I always ate well. I got medical care, got an education. They paid for my college education. I learned a lot from my parents. I actually learn good things from them. And if you start looking at it that way, you find that you have received, and of course what's our most valuable physical possession is our body. You know, your body gets seriously ill, it gets cancer, you'll sell your house, you'll sell your car to cure it. And so that's where it came from. And it's good to think about that, how much your parents have done for you. Now, again, you know, don't expect that your parents will somehow or another appreciate what you are, who you are, what you've done. I wrote my dad a letter on Christmas saying, these are all the nice things you've done for me. And he read it and he looked at me and he said, did you write this? This was a very personal letter. Nobody, you know, I couldn't have gotten this off the internet. But, you know, I just, and that's what I did. I laughed, you know, not in front of him. But I just came to the understanding that don't expect any positive feedback. Don't expect any positive feedback. If you don't have the expectations, you know, then, and I probably did have a little bit of an expectation, but I was doing it not for me to feel better, but for him to feel better. That's what I was doing this. And I think it did make him feel better because after he died, I cleaned out his desk and he had saved that letter. That was the only letter that I ever wrote him that he had saved. So he was unable to express it, but it did mean something to him. And that's about, I'm going to need that Kleenex pretty soon. So does that help?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That was very beautiful. That was wonderful.
This is really important because so much, we hang on to so much childhood stuff and parent-child stuff. And so I'm glad that sharing this is helpful to you. They say your worst enemy is your best teacher. That's a Tibetan saying. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Mom. So any other comments here? Yeah, absolutely right. And that's why I'm starting here. Give you a nice firm foundation. And of course, until we reach Buddhahood, we always can learn how to have a better relationship with ourselves. It's really dualistic. You know, eventually that dualism is going to dissolve. But learn how to take care of ourselves, to be kinder, how to have that warm place in our heart for ourselves. And then also do more to encourage forgiveness of other people. And when I talk about working on people that we have hurt, forgive us, we're going to do an exercise in that. It's just a total, it'll be like this Tonglen. We don't have to go around apologizing to them. And I will say this, last night, after I was done with the talk and got back to Lama songs, I realized that I never apologized to my dad for stealing his car. I never said, Dad, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done it, I regret my actions. You know, so things that I regret too. But it's seeing these and little by little improving and going beyond our comfort zone. Yes, that's exactly right. Very few relationships are irreparable. That because of impermanence, you know, things are constantly in a state of flux and change and so forth. And I never would have dreamed, for instance, even when I was in my 40s, that my relationship with my parents would end up the way it was, in such a positive place. And that Mom would end up so happy. I don't know if I mentioned that. What happened was she developed Alzheimer's disease, and it destroyed that part of her brain that was paranoid. And gradually, she became the kindest, happiest grandmother in the Alzheimer's unit. It was amazing that she was afraid of Afro-Americans, among other things, and a number of the staff actually came from Africa. And one of them would come in, and it would be, "Oh, honey, you're so sweet. Come over here and let me give you a hug." And the staff would do that, and Mom would hug her and kiss her, and whoever came in, any staff member that came in, that's the way Mom reacted. No more fear. She would sit in a chair she did this for off and on for over 2 years. She would sit in her chair and go, "I'm so happy, I'm so happy, I'm so happy, I'm so happy." Well, happy, loving. It was just amazing. It was like my sister and I, when she did this one time to this Afro-American, or this African staff member, my sister and I were kind of going, "Huh? Who is this person?" But yeah, it was really wonderful, because to see the reaction of the staff members, because they responded to love. One of the last lessons Mom taught me was that, when you behave like that, you get really good service. My sister and I, there were one time, and and Dad was living there with her. He was so attached to Mom. So this African staff member came in with bowls of custard for each of us to kind of celebrate. And then Mom said, "Oh, honey, you're so sweet. Come on and sit down." And we all eat our custard. And then the woman has to get up and leave. So Mom gives her a hug. She goes over to my sister. She hugs. She comes over to me. I hug. I don't know if Dad gave her a hug or not. Dad was not a hugger. But even Dad may have given her a hug. And again, I'm going, whose family is this? Is this an alternate universe that I'm in? And Lama Karma, I took Lama Karma to visit her one time, and afterwards he said, "She's a very happy person. She doesn't know why she's happy, but she's very happy." So anyway, it really ended on a very positive note for Mom. She was probably the happiest days of her life. And for Dad, it was very good, and he got to know me, and I had to learn how to interpret what he said and his body language and everything, because you've heard of emotional intelligence. Yeah, very low emotional intelligence, like I told you these stories. But I eventually, through just watching and observing and so forth, realized that he had a lot of admiration for me the last few years, even though he couldn't really say it. So anything else? Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm pleased you're here. You're the kind of people I want here. You need Kleenex? Okay. And this is this little practice that we just did. This is intended to be done regularly to help you love yourself. Because this is one of the biggest obstacles, is feeling that you're unworthy of loving yourself, that you don't have any love to give yourself, even if you were worthy of loving yourself. And you are worthy. You're not the sum of your worst deeds. Nobody is. And saying that, first of all, saying that isn't the same as actually killing her. There's a big difference there. And what you said is in the past, and this is at the present. And if you are feeling, well, this is what can be done. And we'll go into this more tomorrow. But you can actually do a visualization with your mother, even though she's dead, if you want to. But you could do a visualization with your mother where you would put her in front of you, and then you would send her love, and then you would inhale her suffering. And I'll go into this more tomorrow. It's called Tonglen. Tonglen, the way it is usually taught, would be that you start with yourself, just breathing in your suffering and wishing yourself happiness and love and so forth. Then the next, you start with somebody that you are closest to, someone that you feel the most love for. And it might not be your mother, it might be a grandmother, it could even be a pet or a child. Frequently it might be a child, but maybe not in your case. There's some being out there that you have felt love and compassion for. And like I said, it might be a pet, it might be a dog. Needless to say, when I first was taught this, the last thing, my mom went in the enemy position on this. I used my grandmother, who was a wonderful woman. But anyway, the idea is you start with yourself, then you work to the person closest to you that you feel love and compassion, or the being, which, as I said, might even be an animal, a pet dog, pet rabbit. It's hard to have negative feelings about a pet dog or a pet rabbit. And so then you develop this compassion-love relation. Compassion is taking on the suffering. Love is giving happiness. And then you go to people that are more distant to you, and eventually your enemy. And for you, it might be your mother, like it was for me. But anyway, you work on this, taking the suffering away from that being and giving them happiness. And gradually you train your mind to let go of resentment and anger and be more concerned with compassion for these beings. It's a slow process, but on the other hand, it is a process and it does work. And so that's how you do it. It's not all of a sudden, oh, it's just little by little by little. One thing is that is your ego saying that this is where you're most comfortable. And sometimes it's good to do the opposite of what that little voice is telling you. When it says, don't leave the house, that's the time to leave the house. It's that prison that I talked about. Since you've been in corrections, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're institutionalized. Yeah. Did you ever see the movie Antoine Fisher?
Yes.
Yeah, so again, Anyone here see that? Yeah, and it's about a Afro-American, traumatic childhood. He was a foster child, physical abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse. Joined the Navy, and he always got in fights, because of his PTSD. And so Denzel Washington is the Navy psychiatrist and works through all of these things. It's a true story, and interestingly enough, in actual life, he became a correctional officer. So that's why I brought that up. I bought that for our chapel video library, and one inmate told me this place is full of Antoine Fishers. Yeah, that's how you pack your prisons, is bring up kids like that. But there's a way out. And so I'm so glad that you came. And thank you for speaking. Native American is not in conflict or contradiction with Buddhism. I don't know if he told you this story, but when His Holiness the Karmapa came to KTD, which is the monastery that we're affiliated with, and it was on a site that was sacred to the Native Americans that lived there, he saw a protector that he was not aware of before. That was not the Kagyu lineage of Tibetan Buddhism was not aware of this protector ever. And he said that it was a protector for most of North America. Rinpoche told the story, but he wasn't sure of exactly how much, where the boundaries of this protector's territory was. And His Holiness described this protector as being female, young, and dressed like a Native American princess, carrying a feather. And so he then wrote a short protector chant, and it was put in with the protector chants that are done every day at the monastery. Now, at that time I was working, and we had a sweat lodge volunteer that was Lakota. And so I told him this. And he immediately said, "White buffalo calf woman." And now I'm going to need a Kleenex. So it's time for lunch. Well, this morning session is completed, but I can't wait for the afternoon.